China's warning will hit our tourism recovery. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. I thought we'd have a look at this article discussing some of the concerns or the comments that China has made about travelling to Australia. And it's something we should all be quite worried about because regardless of the rhetoric, China is one of the biggest sources of tourism for Australia. And tourism is a big part of our economy. $60 billion of our GDP. Big chunk of our exports. But most importantly, a big employer. Nearly 3.3%. Or, sorry, 5.2%. And it's 666,000 workers. Right now, that industry is primarily in lockdown. Dead. You can't even go from border to border here in Australia at the moment, not even Queensland to New South Wales. We'll have to see how that stands up now that we've had huge protests throughout the country, and maybe people will realise perhaps some of these restrictions have been maybe a little excessive, and that might spur the premiers to open the borders and tourism to return, at least on a domestic level. But this type of talk from China could certainly have an impact on that industry in the medium to long term. We'll have to see, everyone. So let's have a look. No basis in fact. Australia hits back after China warns its citizens not to come here. The Australian government has rubbished China's warnings to its citizens not to travel here, saying it has no basis in facts. I mean, of course our country would say that. The Australian government has rubbished China's claims of increased racism against its citizens as having no basis in fact. So that's the argument for it. I thought it would be something a bit more nuanced than that. On Friday, the Chinese Minister of Culture and Tourism issued a travel alert to its citizens warning them not to travel to Australia due to a significant increase in racist attacks on Chinese and Asian people. Trade and Tourism Minister Simon Birmingham rejected the claims, saying Australia was the most successful multicultural and migrant society in the world. Well, here's the thing, guys. Here's the thing. All these claims about multiculturalism being successful, Australia is a very young civilization. I would argue that culture is an evolutionary response like any other that adapts and changes. When you have people from multiple cultures coming and migrating together, a new culture emerges, which is an amalgamation of everything that has come into the nation. You would hope. And so long as we can have free dialogue and discourse, so there is a melting pot of ideas, then a new, hopefully stronger culture will emerge. But if you have multiple isolated groups not mingling together, you've got protective legislation where you can't even be critical about other ideas, then that's when you don't have an integrated and a mixed together civilization. Find a historical example of where that's ended successfully. Usually doesn't. You can just see it in look at the Balkans. Look at Yugoslavia, guys. Go to ancient history there. Anyway, the Chinese Australian community is a significant and valued contributor to that success story, he said in a statement. Millions of tourists from all corners of the world demonstrate their confidence in Australia as a safe, welcoming, and amazing destination by visiting each year, often returning multiple times. We reject China's assertions in this statement, which have no basis in fact. Our rejection of these claims, which have been falsely made by Chinese officials previously, is well known to them. Well, here's the thing, guys. I think a lot of people are frustrated that communist-backed businesses from China and organizations are buying up assets here in our civilization, are gaining control of what many people consider to be strategically important. And that's different to having a prejudice against Chinese people. And the problem is, a lot of people don't understand that level of nuance. They're just very simplistic and they just say, oh no, you badmouth China, it's racism. And that's the standard response. And the sad thing is we're getting to a point now where people are living in social media and bubbles, where they only see or only speak to people, probably even from their own cultural group. And their culture could be, rampant leftist then they do not expose themselves to other ideas. And then you get such simplistic thinking. Beijing's statement said the alleged attacks came in the aftermath of the pandemic. Due to the impact of the pandemic, racial discrimination and violence against Chinese and Asian people in Australia has seen a significant increase, the statement said. The Minister of Culture and Tourism reminds Chinese tourists to enhance their safety awareness and not travel to Australia. I mean, if you've seen any of the, like flying into London from China, some of the Chinese airlines, just the advice they give to their tourists, if you read through some of those, it's let's just say, not very subtle. Not very subtle. You look at Chinese, even their real estate advertising websites, they've got racial breakdowns. And, well, that makes let's just say they're a very based culture. We put that there. Last month, the Australian Human Rights Commission reported that 1 in 4 people who lodged a racial discrimination complaints in the past 2 months were targeted because of the pandemic. In April, news.com.au reported on a shocking video that showed a gang allegedly attacking a pair of Chinese students as they were on their way home in Melbourne. A Hong Kong student was also reported to have been punched in the face in Hobart for wearing a mask during the early stages of the pandemic. So we've got more claims to the Human Rights Commission, which is an interesting organization all in itself, and we've got a few instances of abuse or racial abuse, which, to be quite honest, happens all the time anyway. And I've seen it from some of my Chinese neighbors to some of my Indian neighbors, guys. Just in the street here we have. A travel warning comes after China's state-run tabloid Global Times published an editorial warning Chinese students to be cautious about studying in Australia. International students make up a huge part of Australia's economy. Yes, they do. And some wonder whether these measures are to punish Australia for its calls for an independent inquiry into the global pandemic. Last month, China announced an 80% tariff on Australia's barley and blacklisted 4 major beef exporters due to labelling violations. Some of those beef exporters are actually owned by Chinese companies, so it feels like a narrative is being created. A narrative is being created in the media to create, just say, some animosity between Australia and China, which is a big problem for our civilization because, frankly, we are so heavily dependent on China, guys. And I will bring up a chart just to show you. And this is from the Observatory of Economic Complexity. And I will log in because right now they have a trial where you get the more up-to-date figures. Now, our economy is not very complex. We're 73rd in the world. Everyone thinks we're an advanced economy. We aren't really. We're not exporting that many complex things. But China is definitely the greatest destination for all of our exports, 35.5%. And then if we scroll further down, most of our imports are coming from China at 24.1%. This isn't even counting the international tourism or international students. Those are 2 other big sources which come from China. So here's the thing. It's quite concerning for our government if those relations sour. But also, the government and citizens are quite concerned about Communist Party-backed organizations coming in and getting strategic control or just control over Australian assets. So, perhaps Australia needs to look at diversifying our relations. But remember, we're just a colony and a quarry on the edge of the world. So Beijing denied the new trade measures were a retaliation. Racial Discrimination Commissioner Chin Tan said the pandemic-related discrimination against people of Asian backgrounds must be condemned. The pandemic has nothing to do with race or nationality, and neither fear of the virus nor frustration at the difficulties we all face are an excuse for discrimination, he said. People of all backgrounds are dealing with this crisis. No group can be singled out, and we must all work collectively to defeat it. Well, let's just say I would argue that certain collective government systems might potentially exacerbate the risk of exposing the world to this virus. Maybe we need to rally against the dangers of saving face and the dangers of certain authoritarian regimes restricting access to information. Perhaps. But what do you think, everyone? Do you think this is going to make an impact on Australian tourism? Do you think it's going to have an impact on international student accommodation and flow through to other aspects of the economy? Do you think there's actually a change? Or is it just a few, angry nutters going out there and being idiots, which probably happens a lot more often than people realize? We'll have to see, guys. We'll have to see. Do you think Australia will learn and try to diversify our business connections? As always, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and you want to support the channel, there are a few ways you can. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us via our affiliate links at Amazon or eBay or Independent Reserve and Kucoin. You can buy our merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, everyone. I'll see you in the next video.